Hello everyone, again, thank you for bearing with us through this heat, and thanks for the clouds too for giving us some cover from that. Before we kind of get everybody on the field, I'm sure you guys can see the plan B is actually an outline of a heart. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to organize everybody and kind of make a chain around the heart to, well, the heart. So before I do that, I wanted to introduce two persons that are here to share their experience of 9/11. I mean, that's why we're here, to commemorate to remember the people that lost their lives in the tragic day, and also to honor the heroes that sacrificed so much of their livelihood, their well-being to save people that were in danger. So with that, let me introduce Craig and Lori Sundberg. They're here to share their story with us.
Hi everybody. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
My name is Craig Sundberg, and I'm the director of the Fox Tucson Theater Foundation, my day job. My wife Lori and I moved to Tucson 4 years ago. But 10 years ago, on the fateful day of September 11, 2001, we were living on the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Hi, my name is Lori Sundberg. I'm a cantorial soloist at Congregation Chaverim in Tucson. I was born, raised, educated, married, and gave birth to our son in New York. I'm a third-generation New Yorker, and our 9-year-old son is a fourth-generation New Yorker. My husband Craig and I will never forget the events of 9/11 and are honored to be able to share with you our experiences of that day and the days and the weeks that followed.
September 11, 2001 was a primary election day in New York, and I had agreed to serve as a legal observer for one of the Democratic Party mayoral candidates at a distant election site in Brooklyn. I arrived there about 5 a.m. and stood around watching for anything unusual. It was a very slow morning, so I spent a few hours at the site and then decided to head uptown to vote. As it so happened, I boarded a New York City Metro just before 9 o'clock and ended up at the Metro stop directly underneath the World Trade Center after the first plane hit, but before the second one did. A good-sized crowd got on our subway, not the huge number you might imagine, but at that time no one really knew what had happened. Though I do remember overhearing one of the new passengers telling a friend about seeing a plane hit the World Trade Center. I figured it was just a private plane that had lost control and didn't think much of it. In fact, it wasn't until after I had gotten to our Upper West Side Metro stop, gone to our election site and voted, and then was walking home when I ran into a friend who said, "Can you believe what's happening?" I said, "What do you mean?" She told me that a second plane had hit, and then it was the second tower, and then it was clear that this was a coordinated terrorist attack. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, I quickly called Lori, told her I was fine, and headed home.
I was studying in school at the time, and on the morning of September 11th, 2011, I was in class. Suddenly, a student came racing in from the hallway, screaming that a plane had just hit one of the Twin Towers. Moments later, the hallways filled with students running, speaking on cell phones, and crying. The teacher dismissed the class. We went over to the dean's office where a little radio was playing. As we were listening, the announcer said that the tower had just fallen. People started screaming. It was very surreal. The dean instructed everyone to get home as safely as possible. We all left the campus, stunned. I walked south on Broadway together with my fellow New Yorkers quickly and in a state of confusion. No one knew at that time what was about to unfold, and we didn't know what to do. People went into small markets to buy water, so I did the same. I also stepped into an electronics store where dozens of televisions were playing the events live as they were unfolding. And right at that moment, I watched as the second tower fell. And then I got very scared. I raced out quickly, picking up my pace as the streets were getting more and more crowded and chaotic. I happened to see a few friends and we all whispered, "Hurry, get home quickly." So I started running. I knew that my husband had been downtown working on the election. I didn't have a cell phone. Not everybody did at that time. I made it to our building and waited anxiously in our apartment. A few minutes later, the phone rang, and my husband told me he was on his way. What a relief. After Craig got home, we turned on the TV, and like everybody else around the world, we watched for hours on that terrible day.
But of course, for us and for the millions of other New Yorkers who lived through the experience, this wasn't just another news report of a tragedy from somewhere far away. It was our city. What made it particularly strange was that September 11th, 2001 happened to be a beautiful day in New York. And that when we knew what was happening downtown, where we were, you couldn't even see any smoke at all, at least for the first few hours. In fact, if it weren't for the armies of people walking north past our apartment on Broadway all day long, you might have thought it was just another day in the life of New York City. As the days passed, New Yorkers of all stripes did everything they could to try to help, to honor the dead, and to repair the damage like so many others across the country. One vivid memory of mine is that first Friday night after the attacks, so many people showed up at our synagogue, the line quite literally went around the block, that the rabbis ended up deciding to hold a second service for those who couldn't get in for the regular one. Another night I will never forget was a few nights later when I, as Social Action Committee Chair for our synagogue, led a group of congregants downtown for an overnight shift at an impromptu staging station for rescue workers that was created in a nearby church. Feeding the way past exhausted firemen and other municipal workers who were trying to clear the devastation was both incredibly sad and incredibly beautiful. It was one of those times in my life when I truly understood the oft-quoted words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, that there are times when we quote-unquote pray with our feet and our hands, rather than with our mouths and our minds.
People around the country and around the world were able to go back to work the next day. But what did we do as New Yorkers? What did we do on September 12th? We turned off the television and we went down to ground zero. We stood gaping with thousands of others at the incomprehensible pile of metal that had been the Twin Towers. The first responders, police officers, firefighters, and medical personnel were busy around the clock. The rest of us just walked around feeling very helpless. We gave out water. We tried to console people looking for loved ones. Thousands and thousands of photographs of missing people went up on walls all over the city. Hundreds and hundreds of memorials, like the one at UMC this year, went up in front of police and fire stations, apartment buildings, and hospitals. The stench of burning air pervaded the city for many months. A few miles north of Ground Zero, our apartment smelled like smoke for weeks. We could see those billowing clouds of smoke from our window and smell death and fear all around. On the streets, people randomly handed out white surgical masks. Everyone covered their noses and mouths, and the entire population of New York City walked around in an endless daze and stupor. Silence was also pervasive. New Yorkers are very well known for being loud and talkative, but no one dared speak a word unless it was in a whisper. Not just for a day or a week, or 1 month, but it was silent for months. It was very eerie. We were collectively sitting Shiva. An entire city was in mourning. And it wasn't just voices, it was also cars. In New York, people drive with their hands on the horn. But after September 11th, no one beeped their horns for weeks and weeks. It was so quiet. Slowly, of course, the horns came back, the talking came back, and the craziness of Manhattan returned. The noise level eventually resumed its fevered pitch. But for those endless days, weeks, and months of mourning, the sounds and smells of death filled our city and our hearts. As the city of Tucson knows all too well, people and cities are resilient, and life eventually goes on. Our son was born 1 year later, and he just celebrated his 9th birthday. We believe in overcoming darkness with light and with love. Thank you all very, very much.
you so much for coming and sharing with us your story and your firsthand experience of the tragic events. And as you said, one of the important things and the reason it's so good to see everybody that is here today is because it shows that out of bad can come good, and this is definitely one of the small gestures that we can do to show that. So thank you very much. With that being said, let's get to the part that we're all here for, to build something with our shirts and organize ourselves to make something a symbol. So, and let this be a symbol of unity and community coming together to show their support for everybody that lost their lives and for the heroes of that day. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do, so we can get this smoothly, so everybody wearing blue can go to the field first. That way we can start organizing them from the top of the heart, and then we'll be followed by white, please.
Okay.
Yeah, whichever one you choose, you can keep.
Actually, really feel it. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that,
Yeah.
and then there's that. So this is Myers Unang Market. It's an elementary school
Yes.
in Tucson.
Yes, that's adorable. I love it.
It was my daughter.
On TV.
What did I just tell you?
Just try to pull more out.
Yeah.
At TUP.
Oh gosh.
There were so many.
Getting ready for school.
I was
I was